It's 4 o'clock on a Monday, and you know what that means. It's time for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. Yeah, baby, this week starring special guest star, Mr. Matt Hirt.
Hello.
Ooh, watch this mix.
Oh, wow. Really high-tech.
All right, well, I am here finally for many of you who have been asking for couple of years at least, can you do a remote at Matt Hirt's studio? So here we are at, I don't know, Shea Hirt? I don't know, what do you call it? Ground
It
control?
doesn't have a name.
My crappy studio is what you
Well, that yeah.
It certainly
When pressed.
What?
When pressed, I call it that.
It doesn't sound crappy. Here, I'm going to pan. Hopefully I can get back to the shot. Anyway, there's Matt over there. I'm off camera today because we can't do both of us being in the shot all that well. But, whoops, I'm turning something that's not going. All right, there's the big pan.
So that's all I got, people.
That's the whole studio right there. Okay. And that's a baffle for doing vocals. Okay,
yes.
Now I'm going to bring this back around. Very, very high tech. It's funny, I don't know if you noticed, but I started an area on the forum that I asked people for ideas on Taxi TV, and everything they're asking for would require like a 2 or 3 camera shoot, an editing room, audio post-production. It's like, this isn't a real TV show. It's more like a radio show with a camera.
Yes.
So, one of the reasons I'm doing this now is that I've been getting a lot of people asking me lately, and talking about on the forum and emails, what is the 5-year plan? And Matt is, to the best of my knowledge, the godfather. He is ground zero, the genesis of the phrase, the 5-year plan. And I can't remember, years ago, probably more than 10 years ago, you and I did a video together when I got my first digital video camera in my office.
Yes.
Little Casio thing. And you were very forthcoming in a very, very popular web series on YouTube. I don't think you mentioned the 5-year plan because it may not have had a formal name at that point.
No, I don't think. It was just something I think I mentioned one time. I don't know that I called it 5-year plan. It was on the taxi forums years and years ago where I just said, like, somebody probably said, well, I've been sending stuff to taxi now for 3 months and nothing has happened and what's going on, why I'm not making money. And I probably said, well, you need more like a 5-year plan or something for this. And that's probably how it came about. So it wasn't like I had thought out some like really sophisticated 5-year plan. It was just knowing how long it takes to get somewhere. I was just being realistic about the fact that this is a slow moving business, and you can't imagine or you can't expect to just immediately be successful and make money.
So the people that keep asking me over and over about the 5-year plan seem to think that there is some actual thing laid out. Like, in the first 3 months do this, in the next 6 months do that. At the end of the first year you should be making X amount of money, and then they think that there's actual written down plan for this. And I think
no, it's like we're not Stalin or something like that. We just got it all written down and
we should sell it, Matt. We should just make up some little BS plan.
No, because it that's like when we used to do the class at the road rally. We would always say, like, the first thing we'd say, well, it's not that. It is basically just understanding why does it take long to make money from licensing music? Why is it taking so long? Especially, if you're starting from basically a novice and not even knowing anything about it. You got to understand, first you have to, understand what is this type of music, what are music use, what is production music, what kinds of different types of production music exists, where do you fit in, what can you produce, and then you have to write something and trial and error will basically teach you how to write the right thing. So that takes a while. So then you have to find somebody that's interested in representing your music and releasing it to the media industries, film, television, commercials, whatever. And then somebody actually has to use your piece of music after it's been made available to these various people. And you also have to understand that pitching process can also, on the side of the production music library, for example, or the publisher, that can take a while.
Let's talk about that, because pitching is almost a misnomer. In the old days of the music industry, you would sign a publishing deal as a staff writer, let's say, and they would give you $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 a year advance. You would turn in a song a month written as a solo, or maybe 2 a month written as a co-writer. And then they would hit the streets. They would decide, oh, this would be good for this artist, that might be good for that artist. And they would take A&R people out to lunch or call them up and drop off a cassette or a CD. Well, in the world of film and TV music, you don't pitch the music until somebody asks you for something like that because they have a need. So,
yes and no.
Well, for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, some companies have the sales staff. And the larger companies, they have sales staffs, and they will, obviously actively try to sell their catalog to various, post-production places and so forth.
But that's like a blanket deal. Let's we should go back to blankets, but I'm talking about this scenario doesn't happen, where somebody, a salesperson from FirstCom, let's say, picks up the phone and calls somebody at NBC and says, man, oh man, I've got an amazing song about falling in love.
Yeah.
That's old school pitching. So pitching in the context of film and TV music might be, I noticed that you guys are going to Russia this year for this particular show, a spy show, and you're going to spend a lot of time in Russia, so I know you're going to need stuff for cars, bars, and restaurants. We've got a great Russian catalog of contemporary stuff that you would hear in a club, on the radio. Is that a better description of?
Yeah, that could be a way. That could be a way of pitching it. I mean, these people, obviously do proactively approach production companies and so forth, knowing what is being shot out there, what has gotten green lighted and so forth. And then also, of course, a lot of times they get the call from the music supervisor or music editor or whatever the case may be, depending on the level of production that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And then those people, and then they will react to that. A lot of times when they decide what to produce next, it's a lot of times driven by customer requests. So. It definitely is a sort of a two-way street, but it's definitely, largely client-driven in one way or another.
And so that really, the fantasy that people have going back to the 5-year plan of, okay, so now in the first year, I figured out what production music is versus just writing pretty love songs from my heart. And now they know the basic structure, and they're able to meet all of those kind of artistic and technical standards, and they can produce real production music.
Right.
A cue, let's call it an instrumental cue for the sake of argument here. And I think that people sometimes think, yes, I just signed my first deal, and they have this picture in their mind's eye of somebody picking up the phone and calling around going, I just signed this awesome new writer.
Right.
I just don't see that happening, and I think that people then get very frustrated that, well, gee, I signed the contract and nothing's happening.
Yeah, I think that's true, but even if, that's, just not a realistic scenario. Even if they picked up the phone and called everybody, and tell them about the awesome writer, that would still not result in a placement, Right,
because the need has to
be there. Yeah, exactly. So, you have to realize that once the song is signed or the tracks are signed, it goes to it needs to come to the point where somebody actually needs it. Now, of course, there's various different scenarios. It can sometimes go faster or slower. Like if the music was produced with a specific television show in mind that is just gonna start its new season or whatever, then there might be, the placement might happen quicker than if you write, an album of Russian balalaika music and you just wait until somebody needs it. That could take a lot longer. But on the other hand, the Russian balalaika is going to sound the same in 10 years and 15 years. So there's a longer shelf life usually for those things. So it kind of balances itself out, and stuff that's much more in demand now, much more contemporary, can also date a lot more quickly. So,
I don't want to. We'll come back to that because I don't want to veer off the 5-year plan. So people always ask me, well, how much money can you make in year number 1 and year number 2, year number 3? And I sent Matt an email over the weekend saying I want to discuss this. But what I meant was to tell people the reality of it and not actually go, well, in my first year I made $5,000. Second year you can expect to make $25,000. So can you lay out the income arc, if there is one at all?
There really isn't, because it depends on many different factors. It depends on the thing that we just talked about, how much immediate demand is for the music that you just produced.
Right.
If there's immediate demand, you might get a few placements within, let's say a half year, and then you might, then it takes a half a year for the royalties to kick back in at least. So you're still, so it's still
American.
Yes, exactly. So that's still now you're already past your first year, even though you got about as lucky as you could get. So
and people walk away because they're depressed if they haven't gotten a check yet.
So this is really it's not for people who have short attention span. You have to just stick with it for a while. And this was really the definition of the 5-year plan, and why we came up with the idea of calling it the 5-year plan is because we said, you need to give it at least 5 years to see enough movement to decide if you want to continue or not. So if you can say to yourself, what, maybe I could make a living writing music at some point in the future, am I willing to give it a concentrated effort for 5 years straight, do everything that I can in those 5 years, and at the end of that 5 years, I can look at the results and I can say, I got somewhere, or maybe you didn't get anywhere, or maybe you decided this is not for you, you don't even want to do this at all. But you have to give it a certain amount of time to be able to get, to allow for things to come to fruition. If you don't give it that amount of time, then you'll never know whether you could have succeeded at it.
And you mentioned variables before. It could be, let's take an imaginary 3 people that start out at the exact same day and they have equivalent talent. So let's take that variable out, the variable of the start date and the talent level. One of them is a dental hygienist, and she works, it works, because I want to be politically incorrect. Don't send letters. I pointed at the computer when I said that like an idiot. Like the letters are going to, they will come out of the computer. But okay, dental hygienist who works 8:30 in the morning until 5:30 at night, 5 days a week, and has weekends free. The next person is a flight attendant with an irregular schedule but gets some big chunks of time off. And the next person works at a guitar center as a salesperson and has somewhat regular hours but a little flex time built in there, and has access to equipment and borrowing and all that stuff.
And noodling around on the guitar while there's not a lot of people in the store.
Exactly. So I would postulate that each of their arcs as to how much they can learn about what is needed to be made and how quickly they learn how to make it efficiently is going to be different because they have 3 different lifestyles. Oh, let's throw somebody in there who's married and has children and responsibilities like going to birthday parties on weekends or taking the kids to the YMCA or Little League. So one guy's 5-year plan, the end result at the end of 5 years is going to be, and I say guys in a very generic sense, it's going to be very different than somebody else's because of the demands and rigors of their day-to-day life.
Yeah, exactly. That's also a reason for the 5 years is that, if most people start to do this, they're gonna have a day gig, because they're not like independently wealthy or anything like that. So there is you even if you do everything that you can within the amount of time that you have available, you still don't have a full time. You don't have 5 days a week, 8 hours a day to do this. So naturally, it's going to take a while, even if you are as efficient as possible with your time. And so, that's why it really does take a while. And that's why we said 5 years is about realistic to get for each of these scenarios, to get to a point where you could say, I made some progress. You can look back at all the stuff that you learned. Maybe you got some placements, or maybe you got some things signed, or maybe you made some money, depending on your, particular the pace at which you're proceeding. But it's enough, I think, in each of those scenarios to basically have to come to a conclusion, a conclusion that's somewhat valid or somewhat that is grounded in reality.
I think that far too many people walk away from it in the third, fourth, and even fifth years because they have in their own minds set a bar that I'm going to be making 50 grand by the end of 5 years.
Yeah.
And it's unlikely. We've seen some people, like we're both friends with Matt Vanderbo.
Mm-hmm.
That guy works his butt off and
Mm-hmm.
I think has 1,500 tracks out there in the market.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably one of the faster 5-year plan guys because he just worked his butt off to the exclusion of almost everything else in his life. So if you're willing to do that, it can be done. It's just most people don't have the option to do it, nor do they have the desire.
And it also may have a lot to do with his initial connections. I don't know his story like all that well, but if you immediately get connected with somebody that can immediately make something happen for you, you're going to be much more likely to be motivated. Like if you, let's say, through happenstance, you get hooked up with somebody who can immediately get your music. And when I say immediately, I mean like within the first year or something like that.
I'm afraid you're going to give a false impression. Yes, this goes back to what you like to say, which is yes, it can happen, but it usually wouldn't happen.
No, but what I'm saying is, he could be. Some people can be in a situation where they immediately. Or quickly get hooked up with a situation that can create some money for them, and that may be a motivator that makes them sort of see the light at the end of the tunnel more quickly, and that may make them even pour even more energy into it. So I think it in some cases it's not just people that they're really hard working, which I'm sure Matt is by all accounts that I've heard, but it's also like if you got that little bit of a lucky break early on and you just get the taste of it and you realize, oh, I can just keep doing this. I think then it's less frustrating than if you just by happenstance don't get hooked up with somebody that can make you money within the first year, which can totally happen, And so you have to realize that doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything wrong with your music. It's just your trajectory or your happenstance is not the same as everybody else, and this is why we can't give you a breakdown of what you have to do in month 1 and then month 2 and month 3, because there's one of our good friends says is like, there's only certain things you can control, and don't worry about the things you can't control because, that's like just wasted energy.
Matt Vanderbo would be the first to tell you that it was because he joined Taxi and went to the Road Rally early in his arc. But two things, again, had to line up. Because I've also seen the flip side is people join Taxi 3 months before the rally. They come there, they spend the entire weekend in the bar schmoozing. They want to meet you, some of the other more very established guys who are very successful and use that as their inroads to libraries that you guys work with. They don't have the talent, or not the talent, they don't have the knowledge and the chops yet.
Right.
They could be very talented, but unless they've learned how to construct library music, the arrangements, the sonic quality, all those little salt and pepper things that go in there, you could have that quick learning, quick entree arc that Vanderbilt had and still not have it work.
Absolutely.
Or you could be supremely talented at making music and not have the speed of the introductions.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
It's
there's just that's why we're keeping it so vague, because there's so many variables. It's not like we don't want to give you better information. It's just that the variables are
there's no absolute prescription.
No, absolutely not. And so the one thing that I always say with production music, it's there's a reason it's called production music. The reason it's called production music is, of course, that it gets used in productions. But to me, I always kind of like to point out that it's all about production. So
right.
Your production has to be. Your production is more important than anything else. A lot of times, if you're a fantastic composer, you might write stuff that's too complicated, and your actual production skills might not be where they need to be, and so then again you're having an issue. So it's like production music is all about production. It's all about what you do within the genre that you're doing. How you're able to make it sound exactly the way they want it to sound when they use it in productions. So it's really, the production is the most important aspect.
And sometimes that production means knowing what not to do or what to leave out versus how to, because it's funny, the last time I did one of these in-studio jobs was at Steve Barden's place. Not that far from here, as a matter of fact, and somebody you've known for a long time.
Yes.
And he did a very simple acoustic guitar dobro track, which you could absolutely hear that and go, yeah, that would work in any of the Gator shows in a minute. But he didn't put 6 guitars in there. He didn't put a bunch of fancy dobro stuff. It was all about creating that end of the day, feet up on the front porch vibe. I've heard stuff from you that's like the horns and strings are so well articulated that if I didn't know it was you and I didn't know it was done with the keyboard, I would know that it wasn't the real deal. That's a whole different skill set. And so you have this range of simple stuff that you could bang out in a couple hours, and I don't use that term bang out loosely. And then you have very sophisticated, high-level stuff that you're more prone to do, whether it's songs or...
Yeah, I would say, I mean, at this point, but that also, it's just a matter also, again, of access, I mean, there's so many different users of music out there, and very, very different types of music work in these different outlets. Whether you're talking about like a news, and it could be there's library music used in news themes,
right.
And there's library music used in some kind of like swampy underscore show that where it's just kind of wallpaper in the background. There's library music used in major movies, obviously, scripted television shows, sports programming, everything, and so different styles of music get used, and most of the companies that are more easily accessible for somebody early in their career, they're not going to be full service. They're not going to be servicing all of these markets. So they're
have sales offices in 12 cities around the world.
So they're what they can use is usually more limited, or what they can use a lot of is usually more limited. So it's important that you can produce what the people that you can connect with can use. That's what they can use, not only what they can like, but what they can place.
Right.
If somebody gets, if somebody has a reputation for being, the hip hop library that everybody calls for hip hop. You can write fantastic orchestral music. That's probably not your best outlet for your orchestral music, because they don't get calls for that,
I wasn't going to get to this till farther into the show, but let's talk about it now because you just brought it up, and that is that we probably talked about this on a panel or something together, but the they love me syndrome. The first time you get in with a library and they love you, what else do you have? Do you have more of this, more of that? Before you know it, you feel like you've got an entree with that person. Maybe the greatest person in the world, and a really wonderful library in every regard. I've always felt that you would be very wise to spread your bets amongst many and not just spread them, but spread them intelligently to see which libraries tend to work with reality shows, which ones. For instance, you have a lot of stuff in feature films. Those are hard things to get. For library music, they generally license stuff from, it's either ancient stuff that's from old record labels, or they get stuff from major record labels. I always smile when I see your stuff in the credits, because I know it's tough for Matt Hirt from the middle of the San Fernando Valley to get stuff in a film. That's not going to happen for a lot of people because they haven't had the years of experience. They don't know which libraries to go to for which things. And you do now, because you know these people and you know which ones have been more successful at getting your Latin stuff with lyrics placed versus your Chinese instrumental stuff placed. Two different disciplines. So how can somebody that's relatively new, and I have some questions today written out for beginners, intermediate, and experienced. So let's say that this is somebody between beginner and intermediate. They've gotten some stuff signed, and they're falling in love with the they love me syndrome, and they keep sending the same stuff to that library first. I think that they may be foolish because they're signing their Chinese instrumentals with that company, as well as every other genre under the sun. That company may have no good output. You know
well, I would definitely, think about the first thing you have to look about the company that you're working with and like see what is their reach in the market. Right. For example, do they have foreign distribution? Right. I mean, that's an important factor. If they don't have foreign distribution, that's not a problem. But you probably want to also work with a library that does have foreign distribution, because there's a big market out there that you are not even tapping into if you are not with somebody like that. There's some fantastic companies here in LA that get some fantastic placements, but they are just in the US. And so, you want to give them some music, but you don't want to just only work with them because you're not going to be tapping into the foreign market. That's just one example. There's companies that work almost exclusively with scripted television movies, things like that. And so, that's an important market and a very prestigious market and a market you want to be in, but there's also a market for a huge market of non-scripted television, and that's reality television is one of them, but that's also news, that's also sports. These are all markets that you want to be in. And then we're talking about the commercial market, the infomercial market. So there's all these markets out there, and not very many companies will have a reach into all of these markets worldwide. I mean,
one or two things, but not seven.
Yeah, I mean the companies that have a worldwide reach into just about every market, they're probably there's maybe 10 of them. I would guess it could be more, but I mean, once you start to look at how they have agglomerated, so
I think that's an accurate count, and funny enough, many of those are the companies that were before this explosion of one-person libraries or two-person libraries. Those were the companies that were around in 1978 and 1984.
Yes, absolutely.
And they're still around, and they've had a chance to grow. It's very difficult for somebody we were speaking about before we went on camera, a one-person library operation who lives in LA that has a few friends that are editors at reality shows and gets quite a bit of stuff used there. Definitely a fruitful library.
You want to be in that company, and but you want to know what to give them. You want to know that they're not going to give you they're not going to get you the major movie placement. They're not going to get you a major commercial. So give them the kind of music that they can use, and they will usually tell you, too. I mean, or you can talk to some other people that work for that company. What are the placements you're getting? I always say, ask a company that you're interested in working with. Ask them for a list of recent credits. That'll tell you, and most of them will be happy to give it to you. And you can tell right there: is there anything scripted on it? Is it all reality? Is there any commercial? You get an idea of their reach, and through that you'll get an idea of what they might be really good at placing and what they might not be so good at placing. So definitely an idea of not putting all your eggs in the same basket, I think, is very important. And, diversification, like with everything, it's good to diversify, to be in different libraries and to be in the different markets that they cater to.
It's like investing in stocks, bonds, real estate, and annuities. You want a little bit in everything, if you make the right kind of music for those things.
Right.
I'll tell you a quick funny story. Well, sadly funny story. I found out the other day, I found a file folder and I opened it up because I was like, what is this stuff? I was going to throw it away. It was somebody on our A&R staff 5 years ago approximately that had gotten an email from somebody who was a major rock star, had a big hit record. Anybody watching the show would know the name of this person. And that person had some sort of library, not very extensive, and they were reached out to by a major ad agency for a major product, and the guy didn't have the right kind of music, so he turned to Taxi and said, I used to be a member of Taxi before I became a famous rock star, in so many words. Can I please run a listing? And 2 people on my staff turned him down. They talked to each other and they said, no, I'm sorry, because you don't have a website. And our members like to be forwarded to companies that have a website so that they can go, they've offered me a contract. I can see that they've done this or they've done that. There's something there that's substantive enough to prove their value to the potential signee. I was heartbroken. I actually picked up the phone and I called this gentleman. He still had the same phone number. He was so delighted that I called him, and now he's going to be running listings because he's an independent film producer of some notoriety. But it just goes to show you, anything is a potential avenue if you just think it through carefully.
Right, yeah.
Those guys did think it through. They know that the part of the mantra at Taxi is we need stuff to point to their credibility for our members' sake.
Right, yeah. I mean, those are, difficult decisions to make, I think, because you want to make sure that that person, is not going to only have the outlet, but it's also going to have the diligence to, treat your members fairly. So it's a difficult decision to make, I think.
I want to go back to the 5-year plan for a second and talk about income, even though we've already established for those of you who've come late that you could go 5 years and not make a penny. It's really, consider it throwing the ball up in the air before you serve at tennis or putting the ball on the tee on a golf course. Largely what you're doing in the first 5 years is setup. You're learning how to make the music, you're making the right connections, you're learning the norms of the industry and how things go, and you might make a little money. Some people get lucky in the beginning, most people don't. For those who are somewhat lucky or a little bit lucky, is it realistic for me to say probably no income in the first year? Second year, again, if you're somewhat lucky, this is not the norm, a few $100, maybe in year number 3, 1,000 or 2,000, because I get emails from people. I've broken the 4-digit mark, which obviously they're over $1,000. Then the 4th year, maybe they'll make 2,200. In the 5th year, maybe 5,000. We've had exceptions where people have made 20 or 30,000, largely because of one really juicy placement that was largely luck. For those who do make money in the first 5 years, if I painted a kind of realistic picture,
definitely, it's not going to be substantial. Quit your day job, income, unless you do get lucky. But you can't count on that.
You can make your luck, like Matt Vanderbilt is the example.
What you can do is to and the person who said this, I think, is Chuck Schluchter. He says, don't worry about the things you can't control, worry about the things you can control. Right. And so you can control the networking you do. You can control the tracks that you write, how good they are, how many you write. You can control all those many things, but you cannot control if your track is going to get selected by a music supervisor to be put in like a number one movie. I mean, that's like winning the lottery kind of luck, and you can't control that, so you can't worry about it. You have to worry about the things that you can control, and you know, put your energy into those things, and then just you know, just let things take their course, and you know. The odds are simply that if you write good music, you get it to the right people, you write enough of it, and you know, you just keep persevering. The odds get better and better and better that stuff is going to start hitting, because it's a numbers game.
And well, it's a controlled numbers game, because so many people love to say, oh, the music industry is a lottery. Well, a lottery is pure chance. You're making a really strong case for, you know, doing the things you can control, about going to the right conferences, meeting the right people, studying your craft, watching a lot of TV so that you understand, okay, that kind of show uses, I'm pointing at Matt's TV set for those of you who can't see me, which is everybody, watching the right show and going, okay, I can do acoustic music. If you're a keyboard player and you don't have a guitar, a mandolin, or a banjo, you're not a string-oriented person, then don't watch something where they're doing a lot of strings and horns, because you're not going to get good at it quickly, most likely. But if you are good at the string stuff, what uses that? Gator shows. Maybe travel shows that need light, airy, acoustic, guitar-driven music. So watch the shows that have the kind of music that's feasible for you to do, and then study what you need to know. Typically 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Typically some sort of button or sting or ending.
Yeah, and you can also of course go to, you know, like we just established, a lot of these companies, these production music companies have websites,
right?
And they release albums, you know, and you can listen to the music there, you know, and they will usually also tell you, you know, it will say, you know, they have a credit on this and this show. So sometimes it's more, I think both are helpful. It's helpful to watch the show because you can see how the music gets used, but it's also important to go, you know, to a library's website and listen to the music there, because there a lot of times you can hear the whole cue, so you can hear, you know, better on what they're looking for, as you know, because they might just use like 20 seconds or something on, especially on reality television, you know, a lot of times it's not the whole cue. You might hear the ending, but you know, you're not really going to hear what's really happening development-wise in this cue, and that's one of the most important things for a successful piece of production music, is to have the right amount of development in the cue.
That means forward movement, where it's constantly building and has a sense of moving forward.
Yes or no. I mean, you know, it sometimes it has no development. You know, that's what I'm saying. The right kind and amount of development, it varies in style. Obviously, if you're doing, you know, dramatic orchestral music, and form and the development is going to be completely different from, you know, a tension drone or you know, a little acoustic ukulele happy slappy hand clappy track, you know. They're all going to be different.
I can't believe you just said that.
So
you're the only guy from Switzerland that ever said happy clappy hand clappy, whatever you just said, in the history of the entire Swiss nation. You might be the only person that ever said that. I want to pan around and show Matt's studio, and then just give you a partial list of his credits. These are largely his film credits, with some TV stuff stuck in there. But for everybody who's watching this, or who will watch the archive at some point in the future, don't think that you need to build a room within a room, or that you need $50,000 worth of gear and need a very sophisticated studio. Matt proves the point that it's the ear, not the gear, with the exception of he does own quite a few libraries, but he's also learned how to use them really, really well.
And you know, that's still not anywhere near room in a room construction cost. You know, the libraries are, you know, it's a substantial investment, but it's not, you know, the same as
And just by buying them doesn't make you talented either.
No, absolutely not. You need to know what you do with them for sure.
Okay, so there it is. There's a keyboard down there that I'm not getting because I don't have pan and tilt. I just have pan because I'm using a mic stand right now. Oh, there you go.
And there's a computer down there, a tower, and you know, I have a rack-mounted computer, but I don't use it at the moment. That's like my, you know, if I need more power, if I did like a big orchestral thing or something, I need a little bit more computing power.
Ah, damn it! Now that I move the camera, you're like sunburnt looking.
That's all right.
Good. The white balance is settling down. All right. So now that studio that you just saw, and this man sitting in front of you, this sunburnt individual,
often sunburnt.
He does spend an awful lot of time outdoors, far more than most musicians.
Yes.
So the first thing, this is from his IMDb page, and Matt's last name is spelled Hirt. If you want to look him up, Matt Hirt, like Hurt Locker, Hurt. So this stuff dates back to '99. None of it was input on the site by Matt. This all came from the production companies. And remember, this is largely film-related stuff, not a whole lot of TV in there. Sugartown, Big Wind on Campus, that was '99 and 2000. 2004, Connie and Carla. 2004 again, Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, a classic, a true classic. Tilt, there's a TV series in 2005. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which was like kind of Matt's breakthrough movie, I guess.
Yeah, that was the first number one I had.
And that was with
Brangelina.
Yeah. Yes, long.
That was the you know, the spark that set Brangelina into motion.
That's right. It was probably your music. They probably went back to the trailers at night and made passionate love to what was the song?
Latin song.
Mi Dolce Caridad, right?
Yes.
Which means my sweetheart, right? Or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
See, that's about all the Spanish I know right there. The TV set. Minnie's first time, I remember when that one happened. I Think I Love My Wife, that's always a good thing. Hamlet 2, The Ruins, now we're up to 2008. Stiletto, 2008, and then there's like II next to it, so I have no idea what that means. Weeds, the TV series. Burn Notice, TV series, and then Tropic Thunder in 2008. I can't believe that was already 9 years ago.
Yeah.
It feels like it was 3, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I just saw that again. That one plays like crazy on weekends in particular, on premium channels like HBO, Showtime.
That's good.
Yeah, it's all good for you, buddy. Gym Teacher the movie. Sorry, I missed that one, but I love the...
That is a Nickelodeon thing.
And that was called Cigarettes and Ice Cream, which makes perfect sense that it was on Nickelodeon, because you want the kids smoking and getting...
Actually, that was I didn't call it that. The library called it that.
All About Steve, Catfish, 2010, you were one of the early people on Catfish.
Well, that was Catfish the movie, actually.
Oh.
Catfish the movie that started Catfish the television series.
Wow,
yes.
I didn't even know there was a movie.
Yeah, there was a movie. There was an independent movie that started the whole phenomenon.
And then Limitless, which was a great movie.
Yeah, I had two songs in that. That was awesome.
That's
I was
really
extremely happy about that.
Savoring Pia Perez. Was that
I
TV
didn't
show?
even know about that. I don't know what that is. Some of them, like, I never, as you can tell, I never go onto the IMDb, my own IMDb. And so I don't know what some of those things are, to tell you the honest truth.
Save the Date, ACOD, Tito Papi, Two Guns, that was a biggie.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Easy Money 3, Life Deluxe, The Gambler, Bosch, the TV series, Cafe Society, Now You See Me Too, which was very recent. That was about a year ago.
That was
right?
a year ago. Yeah.
And Happy Birthday. Now, here's the interesting thing. Is I'm looking at this, and I'm not going to hold it up to the camera, but you guys have to take my word for it. At least half, if not 2/3 of the song titles on here are things like Sang Sang U Ba Jur Naga, Mengao Lu, Ene Suido, Ene Cuido con Amor. Obviously, my foreign language skills are not that great, but the point I'm trying to make is many of these are foreign language songs.
Mhm.
Matt has made that his niche and his specialty because I believe you've told the story before that he realized early on that you didn't want to be where everybody else was. So
I don't know that I realized early on I didn't want to be where everybody else was.
well,
I just got the most.
No lie, so I sound like I remember stuff.
I just get the most traction from things that not everybody else has.
Okay, well,
Early in my career, like when I, used to go, we all both obviously know and love John Brahini, and he used to have this little thing called Los Angeles Songwriter Showcase, and that was actually the first time, even before Taxi, that I would go to pitch my music,
Right.
and I would pitch, like the stuff that I wrote, and
which was like rock, pop or what?
no, yeah, I was trying to be like pop and R&B songs and country songs and things like that,
Okay.
and I never got any traction from it, and the traction when I got real traction by somebody big was I think some guy from Orion Pictures at the time, and it was a mariachi song, right?
Right.
And so I just went, oh, they're interested in that. They're not interested in the stuff that I think they would be interested in, but they're interested in this kind of oddball stuff. And that just led me to understand something about production music that it tends to be it tends to be interested in everything, and the supply and demand is such that they just get a lot more supply of things that everybody does and less supply of things that are kind of out there. And so that led me to realize that if I did stuff that was more out there, I could probably more quickly make inroads with the companies that could place my music in the shows that I wanted to get placed in. And that's been kind of one thing that I do a lot of, and I have branched out very considerably over the years, but it was definitely a good in. It's a good in to have something that's a little bit unique. It doesn't even have to be foreign language or an ethnic music style or anything like that. It could be a new twist on acoustic music or whatever. But
let's
it
define
just
that though, because a lot of people will take that statement you just made. I know musicians.
I can
well.
play something later to explain what I mean by,
All right,
by the
because
new
people
twist.
will think that they need to come up with something that's so genre bending. Everybody wants to be the new Beatles, which I get. Creativity feeds the soul, but when you talk about doing stuff that's outside or out of the norm, can you define that a little better? Describe it a little better. You're not doing stuff that's
No, I'm
like
just saying, like, put in
experimental.
No, not necessarily. But put a new wrinkle on something that already exists, and that's really popular.
Give us an example. Of
An example was, I sort of inadvertently came up with what I would almost call a style of music that I didn't realize that I was doing that. I just wrote a little track, and this was for my own company when we just got started with this, me and my partner Martin Hain. And when I submitted this song to our distributor, he said, "Oh, this is so great. This music, it's acoustic, but it's not like everybody else's acoustic music. It's positive, it's uplifting, but it's not just like strumming guitars. It's just a little unusual, but very accessible, and you should do a lot more of this."
Can you play that one later?
Yeah, I can play it.
Okay.
And so that's what I'm talking about. So like you put a little bit of a wrinkle on something that might open more doors than if you just do what everybody else is already doing. So that can be helpful, And so like find a little bit of a niche, I think, is helpful. Even if your niche is drama, modern drama, you don't necessarily want to sound like everybody else. And you don't want to use the exact same stock sounds that everybody else uses in the exact same way, because it's not going to set you apart.
Yeah, sneaky pizzicato cues.
Yeah.
There's
Well,
like
of course, I've done a crap load of those too. So.
But if you could sneak something in there, I saw a kazoo laying around here somewhere. Just.
Well, I always do something to keep things interesting for maybe just for myself more than anything else, but yeah, no, I mean, absolutely, make it interesting for yourself, and you have to understand that you are not the main event. You are writing music that is helping a message get across of some sort in some way, and so you are not the star, and so the music can pull too much attention towards itself. If it does that, then probably not going to be that's not going to be the right avenue for you to go with your music. So it's a tricky. It's a tricky balance, to understand that the music is you're not going to be the star,
I just saw a great article last night doing my typical weekend obsessive compulsive searching of all things related to our world. I found some guy had written, could have been the Hollywood Reporter, somewhere like that, LA Weekly. This guy wrote a letter to the editor bitching about how the production music industry has just friggin' ruined music, because the music supervisors in particular have ruined music because they want all this watered down music with very general universal lyrics, and they've sucked all the creativity just out of the music industry. And the guy was totally missing the point that you just made so eloquently, which is music isn't the star. It's not that they want you to dumb it down, it's they need you to dumb it down. May not be the right expression, but they need you to not make it so good that it takes the focus away from the story and the dialogue. So what you're talking about, though, we talked about this before we went on camera, was that you do little things to entertain yourself creatively that may not, and I'm almost quoting you here, you said something to the effect of, it may not be enough to make somebody like my piece more than somebody else's, or it may not be enough to get it thrown out of contention, but it's enough to make me happy, in so many words.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely not do something that I think is not going to get, because I do it, the piece is not going to have the same amount of chances to get licensed.
Yeah.
I'm not that self-indulgent, but I'm going to try to do. You put a little magic moment in most of my instrumental cues, to put something in there that just makes me smile and hopefully makes other people smile too.
Is it, now that we all know that you have magic moments in many of your pieces, are we going to be able to find them on our own? Is it like the Eagles used to always put secret messages in the lockout group?
Well, it's nothing like that, but I think you do. I mean, the other day I was doing something, and I was doing a track, and I had Steve Cullum come over. Steve, he's a great guy, great singer, great songwriter, and I had him come over and do some vocals for me, just like wordless, la type of vocals, and on 2 songs. And he said something about both of the songs. He said, like, there's a little, like, that's kind of, what you did there is kind of really cool, or something like that, and that was a little magic moment, nice. Just something that just, that I tried to put into all of my music, and it's not really that I'm, like, thinking about it. I think it's just I get to a certain point in the cue where I just want to do that. It's just like in my, in my sort of DNA makeup to take it a little somewhere else, to add a little extra something, and so I do it, and I don't think it's hurting me, and
certainly hasn't hurt
commercially, and it's I think it's helping, because there's a lot of people out there that use music. In music supervisor, music editors, so our clients, there are a lot of music lovers among those people. They really love music, and yes, they have to do a job. The music has to fulfill a function. They get paid to, send a certain message or whatever it may be. But they love music, and they appreciate. I think they appreciate the little magic moments, in my opinion.
I'm sure somebody is going to say, well, I've made magic moments that didn't make it past the taxi screeners. So I'm really anxious to hear your magic moments, because sometimes the magic moments that we hear take you far afield from the piece of music. It's like, if it makes you turn to the speakers when you weren't already looking at them, the magic moment is probably not good. Whereas if it just makes you go, huh.
Well, yeah, I mean, it can't be like it can't be, like you got a little cue going along and all of a sudden you put like a bebop solo or something like that. That's not going to work,
Okay. Well,
it just has to be a little, a little magic, a little ear candy,
One thing I want to talk about, and then we're going to go play some music. I had my A&R staff send out I saw something on the forum on the weekend. It's the third time I've seen it in 30 days. I think our screeners are being a little overly zealous about asking people to stick to the times. Now, mind you, when a library reaches out to us, or we reach back out to them because they've been a client before, hey, what are you guys looking for? We check with them. Do you want 90-second cues? Do you want 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes? It's pretty apparent that a lot of them really don't think about it until you ask them, and then they go, yeah, 2.5 minutes is good. And I've always contended it depends on the piece. A piece of Chinese music that's going to be in a travelogue might run a lot longer than a piece of Chinese music that's used in a reality show, because somebody walked through the door of a Chinese restaurant and they need 3.5 seconds. So
yeah, but they might also be sitting in the Chinese restaurant.
Right. So different cues are going to work for different applications, and there is a difference. This is something else I've been pointing out to my staff, and I don't think a lot of people in the industry think about it. Generically, people call things cues. Generically, they also call things instrumentals. Generically, they call things instrumental cues. It's funny, when I had Frank Palazzolo and Bob Mayer on stage, and I asked them, first thing I asked them at the rally last year, was the opening question of the road rally, is how do you define a cue? And Palazzolo said it's a place where I put music in a TV show, which is a true answer.
That's where it comes from.
Right, exactly.
That's where it comes from. The expression cue is like, we got a cue here, we got a cue here. When they spot it, they go, we need a cue, we need a cue, we need a cue. And so that's really what it comes from. It's just a generic term of, here is a spot for music.
But it's become taken on other connotations as the industry has morphed and advanced over the years, to now where Palazzolo, who works mostly with songs on dramas, would say, I've got a cue here in the context we just spoke about. A reality show editor, video editor, would say, I've got a cue I need music for, and then can you hand me a cue, figuratively speaking. A cue becomes a different kind of noun. A cue is now a piece of music that's typically around 90 seconds or 2 minutes long, and it's typically constructed differently, and here's the salient point. Oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes, a cue is constructed, meaning arranged and produced a little differently than just a generic piece of instrumental music. Something that's playing on a travelogue that is in Japan and looking at cherry blossoms, that could be an instrumental piece. Whereas something that's in a game show, a Japanese game show, would be constructed a little differently. Now, they could be interchangeable depending on the context and the circumstance. So we've been working really hard at Taxi to really kind of push the libraries when they say to us, I need Asian instrumentals. Mm-hmm. We'll say, do you want cues or do you want instrumentals? And they go, I hadn't really thought about it.
Well, I can tell you the truth. I haven't really thought about it either. I don't really see a difference. In my opinion, the construction varies more by style. There are certain kinds of music, stylistically, that is going to demand a different kind of arrangement than something else, and so I think it's more of a stylistic difference, in my opinion. For Chinese music, for example, traditional Chinese music, it's just traditional Chinese music.
Right,
It's
doesn't lend
like
itself well to a cue format with like.
it just needs to sound like a traditional Chinese piece of music would sound.
Yeah.
You know. So
and you have to go study that.
Yeah, you have to study that, but you know, it's not that hard. But you know, there's certain specific styles of music that are almost not freestanding. They're almost only used as underscores in certain situations, and I think those tend to be constructed different from a traditional instrumental that would have like an A section, B section, A section, B section. You know,
that's exactly my point. It's about context. It's about the genre, the style, all those things. And I think that somebody can elevate him or herself as a composer and a producer, and libraries can do more to elevate themselves if they just give it a little more thought. Because one of the things that we see being an intermediary is a lack of good, the lexicon and the vocabulary aren't consistent enough.
No, they're not consistent, but they're not consistent because the clients are not consistent in the clients are not musicians, so the clients are just gonna say whatever, you know. They're gonna say, yeah, it just needs a little more, it needs to be darker here, you know, or it needs a little bit more edge, or you know, whatever. You know, a lot of the visual clients talk in visual language, and you need to interpret that. And you know, there is no standard. There's no standard, you know, if I tell you the music has to be a little darker, it's not like a chord that you can place that is the darker chord. You know?
But you and I would know what we're talking about.
We would, but we would interpret it differently. Every composer would interpret it a little bit differently. And you know, I remember years ago when we used to do stuff for the Oprah Winfrey show, and they would say, you know, we need some sad music. There's some sad stuff happening in the upcoming season. We need some sad music. And so you would write this like sad little piano track, you know, and they'd send it in. And I remember it got sent to like one of the producers over there, and the producer said, no, this is breaking up with your girlfriend sad. We need loss of child sad, you know.
Right.
So then you go, like devastatingly sad, you know, and then you go, I can understand now. This is too
depends on the girlfriend and the kid, of course.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. It's like it just, you need to go to a completely dark place. So there is levels of all of these things, and sometimes you have to be given an example of what they are thinking about, and then you can go like, oh yeah, and you know, I wrote one of those, you know, loss of child tracks, and they used it on an episode of that guy. I can't remember his name. That guy that the Into the Wild guy. You know, he went to Alaska, and he got
Bear Grylls?
No, you're talking Man vs. Wild. No, there's a guy that went to Alaska, and he died in some bus up there because he couldn't get back across the river. There's a famous movie, I think, directed by Clint Eastwood, and they had an episode on Oprah show where his parents went to visit that bus, and that's where my Loss of Child track played in the background.
Wow.
So, you know, then it makes all sense after you know, because that has to be devastatingly sad there, and like, this is where our child died, and you know, so we're talking about there is no standard musical terms for these things, you know. There really isn't.
And you're right. The people, the ultimate end user, who's usually the showrunner, will probably see the episode on most forms of television and make the final decision. They do speak in very visual terms and emotional terms, but they can't say, I need like more bluesy guitar, or more minors or minor sevenths. They would never in a million years do that.
No.
And I find that many library owners can't either, because they're stuck in the middle between.
It depends. I mean, the people that I work with are usually pretty eloquent, and they're also usually pretty, you know, forthcoming with examples of what they need. So I think that it depends. You know, it probably depends on the level of experience that they have, and who are you talking to at the company. It might not be the president, so.
Remember, I won't mention any names, but I think you and I were probably both in the room at the Road Rally when a music library owner on a panel. What's the band Ryan Tedder's in?
Yeah.
And called it dubstep.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank now too.
Anyway, it was just
But yeah.
two completely different things, and that's kind of the world that we live in Texas. So we really have stepped up our game over the last 2 years to get as much. Not that we didn't do a good job before, but now I think we're doing an incredible job of really stopping and asking ourselves, did we dig deep enough on this one before we put the listing out there? On the other hand, our members are like, God, you guys are so particular.
Right.
But we're just trying to give...
Well, I mean, you're trying to make sure that people aren't misdirected, I mean, if somebody's going to send something in and, potentially even write something specifically, you want to make sure you give them as much information as possible. And then you do have to follow that direction if you want to get that forward, I mean, that's kind of, that's the way when you're not the star. Your music is not the star, it's trying to fulfill a function.
All right, let's listen to some music. Tell us what it is that you want to play first, and what's the point that you're going to make with it. Do a setup, as we say in the industry.
All right. Well, since we were talking about the magic moment, and since we were talking about some unusual acoustic music that's a little different from most of the acoustic music that you've heard, or that you hear every day, or that somebody who has an acoustic guitar would think of strumming or playing when they're just sitting there. I'm going to play a track that is of that style of music, which we are now calling organica, and it's acoustic-based, organic-sounding music, always fairly happy and upbeat, but not ukulele strumming or your typical acoustic guitar something. It's just a little bit unusual, but still, the clients like it. So here it is. It's called Babbling Brook. I'm actually going to start it up.
Had to have the applause. Can you turn down the volume just like 3 dB?
Sure.
Because I don't want to adjust it over here because we'll bring down the whole show. Thanks. Okay, so explain the magic moment.
Well, there's a B section. The B section is not the magic moment, but there's something in the end. So I'm coming down with these chords and kind of a downward motion, and then when I'm getting to the bottom of it, I used kind of interesting chord inversions that like somebody else would probably not have used in that point.
Can you play that section one more time?
Sure.
I felt it as almost a sigh.
So here's the B section coming up, right? So up to here it's convergent. Third in the bass. So it gives me more options. So basically, like, instead of just using the chords with their normal bass notes, I often use chords with in an inversion where the bass note is not the root.
Yeah.
And so by doing that, I just get you get more chord options, you get more chord developments without going too far out. Like,
it doesn't change the emotion of the track.
No,
it doesn't make you snap your neck around and go, "What was that?" But it does give you a little
just more satisfying development.
Yeah.
More musically satisfying development, in my opinion. I'm always like looking for things like that, like symmetry or just interesting things to occupy myself with.
It's funny. I think it was the last time or two times ago I had Shirelli on the show, and he was talking about chord inversions. And I've got to say, back in the days when I still worked in the studio, people didn't think about that a lot. It's become more prevalent in jazz guys did it, sophisticated composers did it, but in regular pop music there wasn't a lot of it. And I think
probably that's true. Yeah,
nowadays people are paying more attention to it. And it's cool that you use that.
I think one of the things is really if you think of your average pop music of maybe having like 6 chords, or 7 or something like that. Well, if you realize that instead of putting the root in the bass, you could also put the third in the bass and the fifth in the bass, and potentially, if it's a 7th chord, the 7th in the bass. Now all of a sudden you got a lot more chords, and they still all fit stylistically in the same genre. They're not like somewhere totally out there, but you still have more options for chord progressions, chord movements, and things like that. So that's.
I never thought about that. I've got to say, all the years, 40 years in the business, I've never totaled up the number of chords in the average pop song. And you're right.
Yeah, it's normally it's 1, 4, 5, and then the relative minors, that's 6, and then maybe they put in like an outer, like a flat 7 or something like that. But yeah, right. There's not much there, that's being used in most pop music. And
you just ruined my life even more. Now I can't listen to anything on the radio because I'll be counting chords.
But yeah, that's how I entertain myself. So this was both an illustration of that style of music, which again you can hear it's all acoustic sounding, but it's not necessarily the first thing that a guitar player would play when he picks up his guitar. It's doing some interesting thing. There's harmonics. It's percussive. It's not very particularly melodic. It sets a mood. It just has a little spice to it. It's a little unusual, but it's still very friendly for a lot of applications, including advertising and underscores and so I think that's just an example of something a little unusual that really caught on with our clients. We get a lot of licenses for this kind of stuff.
Can you turn, the people are saying it's still a little hot on their end, so can you turn it down a pinch more and play like the last 30 seconds of it? Tell us what the instrumentation is, and was everything in there from a version?
All right, I'll turn it down and people should tell us.
That looks good on my end.
That looks good?
Now they'll say it's too quiet, but...
Well, there is piano, acoustic guitar, about 2 or 3, marimba.
Real acoustics or samples?
There may be a real one in there, but there at least 2 are samples.
You said marimba?
Yeah. The marimba was more obvious in the beginning. Then I also used some reverse effects, but that's actually for this particular album we were doing that. With the first album that we did, we didn't use the reverse effects. That was just something to give the second album a little something different, you know.
Right.
But yeah.
So play us something else.
But that's an example of, you know, putting a little twist on, you know, something normal. And then I tried to do something different with more electronic music. Again, I was trying to do something that's like it uses mostly synthesizers, but I didn't want to really do really ambient music. I wanted to have more, a little bit more development and something more happening. Mm-hmm. And I also wanted it to kind of still sound organic. And I didn't want it to sound like EDM. And so it's like just set myself parameters of things that I was trying to do. And then I also the 2 other things came into play there. One was that, you know, a lot of pop music now has like vocal hooks that are not actual, you know, singing, but there's something done with like a sampler or you know, treatment. Like for example, you know, the Chainsmokers do a lot of stuff like that, or you know, the Took a Pill in Ibiza has that like vocal hook. So they have these interesting vocal things, and so I thought, oh, I could put something of that in it. I could like make tracks that use some kind of strangely processed vocal, so that you could barely tell that it's vocal, but there's still some kind of vocally thingy in there. And so that was just
vocal used as an instrument.
Yeah, in a sense. Yeah.
Non-lyrical vocals, as we like to call them.
Yeah, not even so that it's obvious that it's a vocal necessarily. So this is a track that I call Siren's Breath. Now in this one, the vocal is pretty obvious, the vocal sample, but that's also a vocal that does that weird melody.
As I was listening to that, I kept thinking if Tim Burton didn't always use Danny Elfman for everything, this could have been used very well in a movie like Coraline.
It has a somewhat cinematic quality to it. Yeah, it's kind of a little
It's more textural almost than musical, but it definitely creates
absolutely true
a mood.
So.
By the way, people are asking, because you mentioned sequencing before, and people are saying, does he mean quantized when he says sequencing? What does he mean when he says sequenced?
Did I use the term sequence today?
Yeah, apparently.
When I mean sequenced, I just mean, I'm kind of old school, from the time when we didn't have computers that had everything inside of them. So, there was like a hardware unit that was called a sequencer, and you would connect your keyboard to it, and you would play something, and then the sequencer would play it back.
Right.
And the way it was stored inside the sequencer was as MIDI information, not as audio as you would on a tape recorder.
Right.
So this only thing is, when I use the term, if I really still use the term, it is just meant as MIDI recorded as opposed to audio recorded. And now in our modern programs we do both. We have both the capabilities side by side. And for some things audio recording is better. For some things MIDI recording is better. And sometimes when you want to do certain things, you might, it might be best to actually take the audio, take the MIDI part and record it as audio, and then you can do other things to the audio that you can't do as easily in MIDI. So, but yeah. Basically, when I say sequenced, if I said sequenced in this context, that's what I would have meant.
Speaking of audio, and this is completely off topic, but you'll appreciate this because it has to do with recording. I hope the audience does. The other day, I had a little flood in my office a month ago or so. I was moving stuff around, putting it back in, and I found a cassette that said Neil Young on it. And I pulled it out, and it was stuff from the Comes a Time album when it was just Neil and I in the room, and you could literally hear Neil go, oh, okay, 1, 2, 3, and counting it off. So it was just the genesis of the album was just Neil and his acoustic guitar. And the cassette had not been touched in 40 years, and it sounded just as good as the day it was done. So it gives me hope for all those old tapes laying around.
Yeah.
I didn't have to bake it.
It don't have to be baked, huh?
No, didn't have to do anything weird. Just put it in and it sounded amazing.
I guess it depends on the tape formulation. I think mostly the Ampex tapes were susceptible to the shedding. Not all brands, but they were so widely used that I'm going to completely switch gears here.
Okay.
I'm going to go to a pop song. How much time do we have left?
Technically, we're 8 minutes from the end of the show, but if the audience is into it, and I think they will be, we can go an extra 10, so we can go to 5:40, which would give us about 17 minutes.
Okay. So, I do a lot of vocal music for the larger libraries, and that's usually like, really in a different field. It's not meant to be used as underscore. It will be used as source music somewhere, and so they really just wanted to sound like real pop music or real whatever.
For people who are new into this, which most of our audience isn't, can you explain what source music is?
Yeah, source music is just a piece of music that comes from a specific source within a scene. So, the best way to describe it is it's music that actually exists in the scene, that the people, the characters would hear that music. So right. It's coming from their television, or it's coming from their car stereo, or it's coming from a jukebox, or it's coming from somewhere. Whereas in underscore music, when people walk down a dark alley, it doesn't go like zzz, they don't hear that music.
Not unless they've been on heavy drugs before they turn left and go down the alley.
So I did. So as we already established, I do a lot of foreign language stuff, and so I did this K-pop song. And I did something kind of interesting on it, which again ties in with the whole vocal thing that we're talking about. As you guys, I'm sure, are aware of, there's two things that are happening a lot in pop songs right now. There is a section after the chorus that's another hook, and oftentimes that section after the chorus that's another hook is like some kind of treated vocal used as an instrument, like we said in a Chainsmoker song. What is it called again? Say You Never Let Me Go or something like that. And then there's the Pill in Ibiza, and almost every single Selena Gomez song, Justin Bieber, that like it's like everybody does that now. And a lot of times it's in a section after the chorus, another additional hook section, and very, very few songs have bridges now because of that, because it's just something that's happening right now. And so they run out of time, exactly. And so of course I decided, I'm going to do this in my K-pop song. So I'm going to play for a whole K-pop song, and I'm thinking you're going to obviously realize where that hook is. You'll hear it, and then I will I will show you guys how I made that hook, so that in case you don't know how to do that or have, an interest in it, you can try it yourself. So here is the song, and it is called Nasty Boy. Like many foreign language songs, Asian pop in particular, they tend to have some English snippets in them.
네가 누군지 알아, 걔도 누군지 알아. 나도 너한테 속았어. 내 눈이 밝아지게 될 거라며 또 네 된장인지 알게 되더라. 넌 나 속였어. 왜 자꾸 섞어서거려 감입하고 왔어. 완전히 밸런스 잡았어. Not to left, not to right, just right at the center with the word. 이 시간 이제 끝나가. 나보다 네가 더 잘하잖아. 우리 사이 영원할 거라 생각했어. 다 보여 걔를 흉내낸 것뿐이 너. 걔가 너보다 훨씬 핫하더라고. 걔가 너보다 훨씬 눈부시더라고. 다 모여 이제 최후의 네 모습이 다 들려 이제 추악한 네 목소리. 스웩은 완전 새끈 네 스웩은 완전 잦은 넌 정말 웩웩웩 nasty boy. 스웩은 완전 간지 네 스웩은 정말 간지 넌 정말 웩웩
comes the vocal.
네가 그 자리에 있으면 너도 대세될 줄 알았어. 짱 먹을 줄 알았어. 넌 그렇게 뱀새같이 따라해. 네 다리는 왕새 좁다 아파해. 이제 너는 개의 심판 속에 떨어질 일만 남은 지랄 같은 운명 속에 넌 히컵 하늘에서 비웃어. 땅 위에서 비웃어. 다 보여 이제 최후의 네 모습이 다 들려 이제 추악한 네 목소리. 스웩은 완전 새끈 네 스웩은 완전 잦은 넌 정말 웩웩웩 nasty boy. 스웩은 완전 간지 네 스웩은 정말 먼지 넌 정말 웩웩웩 nasty boy.
This song was really fast, so there was room for a bridge. And it's coming up now.
걔가 완전 이겼어. 깨끗하게 이겼어. 깨끗하게. 너는 완전 다졌어. 비참하게 다졌어. 비참하게. 걔가 완전 이겼어. 스웩은 완전 새끈 네 스웩은 완전 잦은 넌 정말 웩웩웩 nasty boy. 스웩은 완전 간지 네 스웩은 정말 먼지 넌 정말 웩웩웩 nasty
So I knew that I wanted to do vocal hook, and I didn't really know what I was gonna do because I didn't know what the lyrics was gonna be like or anything. But I left this section there, and I said to my co-writer, who is the lyricist and the singer, and he's actually Korea. I said, I want to have a vocal hook there. So if you can think of something, just put something there. Or if you can't think of anything, leave it blank. And he put something in there, and I didn't really like it, but this Nasty Boy thing was really cool, and I had no idea, of course, that was what the lyric was going to be. And so in the end of the chorus, he sings, Nasty Boy. And so I took that phrase, and I put it in my sampler, and out of that, I created that hook. So this little thing on you'll hear it right now, I think. Nasty Boy. Nasty Boy. I took that, and I put it in my sampler, and that's in here. Contact. Somewhere down there. So I've called the instrument Nasty Boy here, as you can see. Mm-hmm. And so this is Contact. Most of you guys know Contact is a sampler that pretty much everybody has. And you open that little wrench there, and it opens the view of the innards of the instrument, so to speak. And there you can see that I dragged this audio recording and assigned it to these keys. So you can see there's one there, there's one there, there's one there. And that can then be played from the key. And I got Nasty Boy. This is the note right here. Nasty Boy. Is the note that he sings it on. Nasty Boy. And then he also did a double an octave higher, and I think that's up here. Wait. Nasty Boy. There. And you already heard the Mickey Mouse effect. Nasty Boy. Nasty Boy. Nasty Boy. Right, so that's the two things. And so but that starts with like the flat 7. It doesn't sound with the note that I wanted, which is this song, right? So I use this, and then I also assigned a pitch bend of 1 octave to it, so I can. So I can make that, and so then when you look at it inside, you can see that. The pitch bend does all these moves there. So here are the notes that I played, and then the pitch bend bends it down and up, and so it adds that extra sort of gliding sound. So then if you just listen to that and follow along there. Nasty Boy.
It's really almost a bass line in the way it's constructed.
Yeah, exactly. It is, and then I put some flanger on it and stuff. And then also in the end, I thought I wanted to do something with the boy sound, right? So I isolated that and made it into its own sample, so I can now play boy up here.
So this is a great example. So many of the listings that we put out now say ear candy. Make sure you have plenty of ear candy. People don't know the definition. It doesn't mean you have to mimic this exact thing, but it's the creative use of something. Yeah. How do you know when you've gone too far? Because this would be really easy just to overuse.
Well, you orient yourself by what's on the charts, and to tell the honest truth, is like what they're doing now. 10 years ago, it would have been too far. Right. Way too far. I mean,
especially
it's interesting.
K-pop and J-pop.
It's interesting because now. When I grew up and first started getting into music, we got the first hardware samplers, the emulators and then Sonic Mirages, and we did this kind of stuff And the pioneers of that kind of electronic music did this kind of stuff, and then it just completely went out of style. And now a new generation of producers have rediscovered the joys of sampling and is now using the same type of stuff again. And of course nowadays there's different ways of doing it. You don't have to do it in samplers. There's other ways to do it, but this is still a really fun way because you can play it. You can. That's like you could make that into a patch that could be a riff for a dance song. So
that's almost a horn part when you play it up there, not just because of the octave it's in, but just the style. Whereas when you're playing it with the pitch bends in it, it was very much like a bass part.
Exactly.
And again, not just because of the octave, but the actual part that was written.
So, but that's an example, and if you have a sampler like Contact, like don't just use it to play presets, that come with it. You can load any recording that you made, your own recording. It could be a guitar chord, it could be anything. You could load it in there. You can play it from the keyboard. You can do all kinds of funky stuff to it, and that's what these modern producers are doing. So why not try it yourself?
I watched 20 minutes of K-pop in my kitchen the other night. My 20-year-old daughter had two friends over that are YouTube stars, and they were watching K-pop just as an educational thing. And it's really fascinating how it's in one sense very much like American radio pop today, and in another sense absolutely you can see the difference, especially when you watch the videos. And I think there was one that had like 200 girls that were on some TV show, all doing the song at once. And I thought to myself, you don't really hear that on American radio. They do take it to another 15% level, 15% above and beyond. I think everybody should spend a weekend watching K-pop so that they can incorporate some of these little things.
It's gotten incredibly creative. I mean, it's really like there's one album, I think it was last year, that I can't remember if it was Rolling Stone, but some like really big American music magazine, in their top 20 albums, they had only one foreign album, and it was a K-pop album.
Wow.
And that album is really killer. I mean, it's really, really...
Yeah, the production, what I heard the other night was just astonishing.
Oh, yeah.
And generally done by really young people. I went upstairs, whipped out my laptop because I didn't want to embarrass myself in front of these 20-year-olds. But the guys making that stuff are very, very
a lot of them, I mean, they learned from they used to got a lot of producers from the U.S. and I think those young kids learned from those guys, and so kind of it jump-started their market to really where it's also now in Asia. It's by far K-pop is by far the hippest music, that the young kids like to listen to in China, in Japan, everywhere in Asia, because it's just cutting edge. It's like
the amount of money they're spending on the videos.
Oh yeah,
it's like back to the old MTV days of $200,000.
Oh yeah, crazy amounts of money, and the a lot of the groups are like, it's almost like the way the Russians would train their gymnasts. It's like it's like they go into these camps and they groom these groups. It's a little bit scary perhaps, but
someday we're gonna find the bodies of all the kids that didn't make it through the camp.
But it's not. But it's really great. It's fun music, and this one is actually the more conservative of the ones that I did. I did stuff that was even more, a little more cutting edge. This is more like Psy, like the Gangnam Style type of deal.
Yeah, Polly is talking about Big Bang. That was one of the ones I watched the other day.
Yeah, Big Bang is one of those ones that are still big.
Any final thoughts? Because it's time to wrap up the big show. You've been amazing as always. And seriously, I could just turn on the camera and go grab a burger and come back. But
final thoughts. I don't know. Like, is there a question?
Well, if we start with questions, we'll be here for another hour.
No, I just mean, is there maybe you came across one that you either have or that somebody like that flew by and you thought, oh, that's a good question.
I've got one that I didn't ask you that probably works best as a closing thought. For people who are just starting out, because again, I want to go back to, we've got beginners, intermediates, and experienced people. The experienced people know a lot of this stuff. The intermediates have learned a lot of it from watching Taxi TV and the Road Rail, I think. For the beginners just starting out, are there any mistakes that you see that are common to the beginners that would frustrate them and deter them from having the perseverance? What might smack you down emotionally and make you go, you know what, this isn't for me, when they could have been a foot away from the finish line?
Maybe I could actually say something that I just recalled. There's a guy who posted something on Facebook, I think. He's, I believe, a Taxi member, and he, has sort of, written some music for quite a while, and it's good music by, as far as I know. Obviously, I don't know everybody's music, but, but he said something like, and he was, kind of sarcastic and fun. He said, well, I hope I get a placement in the next 26 years. And I said, and then I just thought about it for a second, and then I said I put a reply, and I said, well, if it's a consolation, any consolation, 26 years ago I did not have a single placement, and I would not have a single placement for another 7 years. So 19 years ago is when I had my first placement in 1998, and you gotta realize is that don't you have to think, like if you look a quarter century ahead, you could be making very nice money and be very successful even if nothing happens in the first 5 years at all.
So funny that you said 7 years. The last thing I thought of before I crossed Kittredge out there was I flashed back to the fact that it took me 7 years before I got back after I started Taxi. Took me 7 years to get to the income level I was at before I started the company. And I was thinking in terms of people that walk away too soon. I could have walked away every single one of those days for 7 years.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you can. And the question is really that are you willing to give it a shot? Is it that important to you? Is making music as a way to support yourself, is it that important to you that you're willing to give it 5 years or whatever to just see if something can happen? If it is, then that's not that bad of an investment, but if it's not, if you don't have the passion for it, or if you realize that you just want to make your music your way and you would rather have a day job that doesn't drain you creatively, so you can come back in the evening and do your music, that's cool. I'm not telling anybody to do what I'm doing. I'm telling you that if you think this might be something you're interested in, give it a shot, give it a try, like find out more about it. But I'm not trying to tell you, you got to do this because this you can make money and the other way you can't make money. It's not all about that. It's about you have to be creatively happy but you have to keep an open mind enough, or I would encourage people to have an open enough mind to at least give it a shot and see if this is something that they might enjoy.
You know what else? Pensions aren't available like they used to be. So many of us that are 30, 40, 50, 60 years old and don't have a retirement fund and could very well have to work until the day they drop dead, which is a pretty friggin' sad state of affairs. I look at you and some of our other members, I'm not telling tales out of school here, that have crossed the six-figure line, who will be making money until the day you die because of the seeds that you planted now in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and you can still be making the music at 78 years old and loving what you're doing.
Yeah.
So it's worth the 5-year investment.
I think for me, definitely, I would agree. For me, it's like I enjoy this very much, and I don't plan on retiring because I love doing this. So I might slow down a little bit, take more breaks and do some more, concentrate on some other things. But I will always be writing music, and it's not like I have to work until the day I drop dead. I want to do this.
In your
pretty
case,
much,
you'll probably get eaten by a bear on a mountain.
Probably not.
Well, thank you, Matt. This was awesome. I had high expectations because we've done stuff like this before, but you exceeded those expectations.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure.
Today. And I hope you guys at home enjoyed it. We'll see you next week. I wrote in my book what the show is, but I've forgotten. I do know that we've got, Erin Jacobson, music attorney, coming up in a couple of weeks.
Love Erin.
Yep, she's amazingly good. It's almost time to get Robin Frederick back on the show. People have been asking me when Shirelli's coming back. So we have all kinds of good stuff coming up in the weeks to come. And with that, I bid you, not from Taxi World headquarters, but from Matt Hirt's Rappy Studios, he likes to call it, a fond farewell. Thanks again, Matt. Bye, you guys.
Bye, everybody.